All right. Good evening. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Bava Daf Tzadi Zayin, and we're starting at the very top line. Just for the next couple of days, tonight we're going to learn until the top of Tzadi Ches. If you look at Tzadi Ches Amud Beis, you'll see that it's basically a 4-blot page. I mean, it's massive. And if you look at Tzadi Tes, which is Friday's blot, it's fairly regular. And the blot for Shabbos is very short. So we're not going to have a regular break. It's not a break when it's on the heels of what's before it, but the pagination, our breakdown is not going to be regular over the next few days. Sunday I'm here. Monday, Tuesday I'm out of town, and I've already scheduled them into my day to post them, so we will not be in person. Then next week also, Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday, we will not be together unless my flights change. And the week after that, I'm in Israel. So I'll have a lot of missing 9 days in February, but I will try not to fall behind on the posting. All right. We're starting at the very top line. We had a discussion, one that seemingly is a machlokes in the Tanoim, as to whether or not an Eved has a din of karka as it relates to the principle of karka ein and igzelis. You can't steal property. So if an Eved is like karka ein and igzelis, then you didn't steal anything. And if an Eved is not like karka, then you did. So says the Gemara on the top of Tzadi Zayin Amud Aleph, Mi Amar Rav Avda Kim Mikar Koydami. Does Rav actually say that there's an equivalence between an Eved and karka? The Amar Rav Daniel bar Rav Katina Amar Rav. Rav himself said, that if I take your Eved and I use him for my own purposes in my own house, in my own field, so the halacha is your pater. If you want to say that an Eved is like karka, am I pater? Really, even though you took him out of my property, but lemaisa he's my Eved, he's like karka. You burn my property, you pay for my property. You use my Eved, you pay for my Eved. Why would Rav say you're pater? Says the Gemara, what are we talking about where you use my Eved? It was at a time when he was after hours. He wasn't in uniform anymore, and that's when you used him. In that case, you're pater. That's not that was his free time. You don't. That's not my problem. Huh? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, top line, Dibra Maschel Shelo B'Shas Malacha B'Shah She'eno Ragil Lasos Malacha O She'en Achshav L'Bailav Malacha Lasos D'Zeh Nehene V'Zeh Ein Chaser Hu Upater. Fascinating. That it's not a din in like schedules. It's just I have nothing to do right now. So during that time, if I chop him, so zenene v'zeh ein chaser, a little bit of a unique language. We're accustomed to saying zenene v'zeh lo chaser. It's really not how Rashi framed it, not how Rashi refers to it. I asked the Shaila to write first. I probably shared this here before about using Shaarei Tzedek's parking lot to go to IF Optical.
Is that legal? I don't think it's legal.
Legal or halachically legal? Are you talking about Judaism or are you talking about secular law?
Judaism.
So you're asking this Shaila, zenene v'zeh lo chaser. Rabbi first said it was mutter.
If it's right,
that's not even zenen v'zeh lo chaser, because that's not a reduction in benefit on the bailim. It's annoying. You're annoying, but I don't think it triggers the din of zenen v'zeh lo chaser. I remember. Yes. We really try not to use that word too often. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
They don't want the liability of somebody because somebody.
So really, that's zenene v'zeh lo chaser. It is until someone falls. They're just being litigious. They didn't want to. They were looking around the bend, and I understand. In theory, I understand why they did that. But in halacha, we seemingly don't have such a thing. We look at the moment in time and say, is it zenene v'zeh lo chaser or is it zenene v'zeh chaser? We don't, I mean, there are times in halacha where we look around the bend. This is not one of those times. Okay, Lamaisa, that's the answer to your question, Stan. Rashi explained that this Eved was not working at that time. You chopped up my Eved and you used him. The halacha is your pater. Says the Gemara, perhaps we can compare it to the following Shaila. Ki had shalach le Rabbi Abba le Mari Bar Mar. This Shaila was posed by Rabbi Abba to Mari Bar Mar. What was the Shaila? Tzadi Zayin Amud Aleph, 7 lines down. Boi minei Rav Huna. Hadar bechatzer chavero, shalom midaito. I pitch a tent in your backyard. You're out of town. You had no idea. Tzarech lahalos lo schar o ein tzarech lahalos lo schar. All right, then I come back or I get a Google notification that you're sleeping in my backyard. What's the din? Do I have to pay you for having slept in your yard without permission? Yes or no? So the Gemara says, Vishalchule, the response of Mari Bar Mar was sent back to Rabbi Abba, and he said, Eino tzarech laha'alos lo schar. You don't have to pay. So what's the equivalence between that and our case? Well, in the case that we started, we said that if I use your eved without rishus pater, because it was shelo b'shas malacha, here too, you weren't in your yard, to piggyback on the language of Rashi, and therefore, ein tzarech laha'alos lo schar. So the Gemara tries to equate these two cases, case number one of me using your eved without rishus, and case number two where I sleep in your yard without rishus. Says the Gemara, no way. Hachi hashta. How can you compare these two cases? Bishlama Hassam, I could understand in the case of Mari Barmar, the second case that we saw where I squatted in your backyard. Bein Lamanda Amar, Besa Mesva Yasiv Nichale. I'd prefer someone to be in my house than not, because at least they'll do some house upkeep. Bein Lamanda Amar, that the pasuk actually says Usheia Yukas Sha'ar. She'ia was the name of a demon, of a shade, and when someone lives in a house, the shade is not in the house. So maybe there's some preference to me having you squat in my house. So in the second case, I understand. Nichale Elahacha, in our case, where I use your eved without permission, mi nichale de nikchosh avde. Do I want you to lower the energy of? That's ridiculous. I don't want you to ruin my eved. When I play softball in the summer, we always hated when our teammates would sub the first game because they were tired by the second game. You just wiped out my eved. He just plowed your whole 50-acre field. He's exhausted. Now I need him to work. He's trashed. So the cases are not comparable. I want you in my backyard because that gets rid of the shadim, but I don't want you using my eved. So why are both cases putter? So the Gemara says you're 100% right. Amre, hachanami nichale. It's also nichale in our case of the eved. Delo listere avde. There is a benefit in using an eved, that is that he should not be bored. Rashi, 12 lines down, give or take, Dibra Hamaschel Delo Nistere, Shelo Yilame Darke Habatola. Okay, we should discuss this language of Rashi. It's very, very interesting. It doesn't say Shelo Yilamed Levatel. It's Darke Habatola. There's a mahalach in being a batlan. We, as a culture, are exceptional at being batlanim with a mahalach. I only watched one season tonight. So we've created a heter to be a batlan. That's not right. I don't know if this is what Rashi means, but I'm just telling you, when I read this Rashi, I'm like, what is he talking about? I didn't look into it, but the language is funky. No, it's not normal. Levato, we have other phrases in Shiamum Mevi Dezima. We didn't want it to become a licentious. Okay, there's a lot of things that Rashi could have said. What?
You don't want to put any ideas in his head. It's not shot that you care if he sits for a while, but you don't want to put any idea. He might enjoy it too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. He might suddenly
It's yeah. I'm sure it's something like that. And I'm sure that if I was standing on a soapbox as a shul rabbi, I would blow this out of the water and make a whole conversation about Netflix. But yeah, but it still is a very interesting phraseology. Even the Super Bowl, we're like, hey, we won't watch the commercials. It's badlanus. It's the same badlanus. It's just you're not watching the pure Isuri Del Raisa preachers. Okay, very good. Mazel tov, you're from me. We've made batala like part of our culture. It's not like we're not busy people. I'm saying we pack 18-hour days in and we still manage to be mevatel at least 10%. We're meiser ksafim when it comes to batala. Okay, third of the way down. Be Rav Yosef Bar Chama, havu takif avde de inshi, de maske behu zuze, fa avde behu malacha. Listen to what Rav Yosef Bar Chama used to do. Let's say I'm Rav Yosef. Let's say you owe me money. If you owe me money, I'm going to take your eved and use him until you pay me back. What's the problem with that? Sounds like ribbis. What? Nope. No, it's not badlanis on that end. We're talking about an eved lechora that didn't have anything else to do, but it's ribbis. You owe me $500. What did I actually get when I was done? $500 plus what your eved gave me. That's ribbis. And even if it's not ribbis deoraisa, depends if it's a halva or not. We're going to discuss, but it's still usher. It's still nisr derabbanan. I didn't even know how that works, but I presume it would then not be the case. I know the poskim discuss when somebody owes you money and you know they're going to pay you back, but you drive an extra carpool for them. The poskim discuss if that's mutter. because you're giving them. It's gas money, it's time. Nicht pasha. Carpool is worth a lot.
It's not about the gas. Electric car, yes.
It's not about the gas. It's not about the gas. No. Oh my gosh, no. But I don't know. We're going to learn in the next couple of Masechtas a lot about ribbis. Well, we're going to pretend to learn about it. We'll see how deep we actually get. You die, yeah? Yeah, it's yeah. I hope I don't do that from this chair, but let's see what we figure out. Amar le Rabba, it's really Rava Bere. Rava was the son of Rav Yosef Bar Chama. Amar le Rava Bere, my taima avid marhachi. Why are you doing that? Isn't that problematic? Amar le de Amar Rav Nachman avda nohum krise lo shave. Even the food that I put into the stomach of that Eved, the Eved's a zero. The food I gave him is a zero. In other words, what you're getting is a zero. So when you owe me $500 and I also use your Eved, but your Eved's a zero. So it's not 500 plus what the Eved did, it's 500 plus zero. So it's not a ribbis issue. By the way, the Gemara hasn't said ribbis yet, but like it's the subtext of what's going on here, potentially. Amar le, Amar de Amar Rav Nachman, I could understand that you say that your Eved is worth nothing. Kigon Daru Avde, like this person whose name was Daru, who was an Eved. Demarkid Beikube, he would go dance in the clubs in order to make a couple of rubles so that he can get some alcohol. But Kulu Avde, Me'avad Avde, everyone's going to do this ridiculous. No, only that Eved's a zero. But other Avadim are not zeros. So if your Eved is a good guy and you owe me $500 and I borrow your Eved, I take your Eved because I'm annoyed that you haven't paid me yet. So what's the din? The Choras Ribbis, because now he has value. Amarle, don't worry. Anaka Rav Daniel Svirali, I hold like Rav Daniel, who holds Amar Rav Daniel Bar Rav Katina Amar Rav, like we saw earlier on the page, Hatokef Avdo Shel Chaver V'Asaba Malacha Pater, that it's a zero value, there are zero sum gain, and therefore there's no ribbis issues over here. Alma, what do we see? Nichale de lo listere avde. Why is it that we see that you're pater? Because we didn't want the Eved to sit around doing nothing. So this is a lengthy way to verify the answer that we saw earlier, that the case that we started with of Eved and Karka, the case that we started with, of me taking your Eved where I'm putter, and the second case that was presented, which was squatting in your property, shalom ladas, both of them are putter. One, because it's better that the house should not be totally empty, keeps the shadim away, and you're also probably going to clean up a little bit here and there. And the second, and our case of hatokef ba'avdo shel chayveros b'malacha, that's because we don't want the Eved to learn bad habits. Amar le, okay, look, I understand where you're coming from, but you haven't really solved the ribbis problem. Hani mili hecha delo masik b'huzuze. I could understand if I'm using your Eved when you don't owe me money and you should be putter. But Mar, in your case, kevan damasik b'huzuze, since you do owe money, or since you are owed money, mechze kiribis, doesn't say it's ribbis, it's mechze kiribis, it appears like ribbis. Amar Rav Yosef bar Minyumi Amar Rav Nachman, af al pisha amru hadar bechatzar chaver shalomi daito and tzarchal al loschar. Even though it's true that if I squat in your property with no permission, I'm putter. When is that? That's only in stama case. But halvehu, the dar b'chatzar chaver, if there was a halva involved and then there was squatting, no. Tzarach lahalos lo schar, because otherwise it is ribbis. So let's do the math. You owe me $500. You squat in my property. You owe me $500. I squat in your property, right? I have to pay you for that. Otherwise, I benefited beyond my 500. It has to be nil. Otherwise, it's going to be ribbis. And the Gemara says that this argument actually worked. Amar le hadri bi. You're right. I need to stop using people's avadim when they owe me money, provided that the Eved is an Eved that has value and he's not a total disaster, train wreck, because then it's actually ribbis. Fascinating. Questions? Good? Okay. Says the Gemara 2/3 of the way down, 5 lines before the wide lines. Hatokef sfinaso shel chavero. All right, it's one thing to squat on your property, but when I know you're out of town, I'm going on your boat. And I hop on your yacht, a mega yacht, and I am enjoying. V'asaba malacha. And I even made some improvements. Your sail was made out of a cheaper material. I upgraded, and I threw out your other sail. Amar Rav, how does this work? Amar Rav, Ratza schara notel. If he wants, he can take wages. Ratza pachsa notel. Or he can figure out the difference in price, right? I can say now it was worth $10,000 more than before. I'm taking $10,000 in the pchas, and the value. So it's either the schar of rental or the pchas, the new value based on appreciation. Whichever one is more, you can pick, which is a very unique halacha. It's up to the guy who did the improvements.
What kind of reduce?
Increase. I know it says pchas, but it doesn't mean that. It means the math equation
Says where you improve.
improved. It is improved, right?
So pchas
That's what he said. And v'asa bo malacha. I did something. So the pchas means the math equation of it used to be X and now it's Y. It just happens to be the numbers in the positive in this case. Should have said shvach though. You're making me rethink this. You're correct, David.
I
Rashi,
didn't say.
you did. You asked why I was saying pchas in the positive. Rashi says pachsa im nishbara onis kalkala udmei pachsa yiseren al schara notel dmei pachsa. Very good. So I thought asa b'malacha was a positive. It's not a positive. It's a negative. All right. So I keyed your boat. I was upset at you. So then we're doing the math equation. Either I who damaged your boat have to pay the rental fee, or I have to pay the pchas, the reduction in cost. Thank you for calling that out. That's Rav. What?
You use the boat and you damage it. Why is it one of these?
But why should you pay for using the boat? That's from the top of the blot. No, we say if I squat on your property, I'm putter also. Yeah, v'zen and v'zen chaser. Or even better is that you're keeping the shadim away, whatever the svars of the Gemara. Yeah, that's Rav Shita. What'd you say? Sorry, Mr. Yaakov.
Maybe like wear and tear, like not real damage, but like
I don't think we've ever seen that.
It's interesting, because you sleep in someone's backyard, there's no wear and tear, boat, I mean, the more you use it. But I don't know, you know.
I don't think we do that in
maybe
halacha.
part of the pchas. Maybe that-
I think there has to be I think there has to be a be'en to the pchas. I think there has to be a mamashos to the pchas. It can't just be conceptual, and not that it's conceptual, but
Wear and tear is always.
like we have wood floors in our house that are stained, and in the spot where our chairs are in our kitchen, the wood is slightly lighter. Once doesn't do that. 1,000 times does that. So I don't recall. You're asking good. I have no idea. I don't recall seeing a case like that where we measure damages with an invisible pchas. I don't, even though it's in aggregate, it's hezek she'eno nikr today, but in the scheme of things, it's hezek that will be
The
nikr.
hezek that you did.
Correct. Correct.
Well, it's another notch.
L'shitascha, if I were to, if I personally did the damage, if I moved your chair 1,000 times in your kitchen, on the 1,000th time, do I have to pay, even though it's only one effort? I'm just guessing from what we've seen that it's only when damage is visible in the moment. I'm just guessing. Okay, so that's Shitas Rav, that you can pick your poison, that you either can have the damager pay the rent or the damager can pay the pchas. Ushmuel Amar Eino notel ela pachsa. No, he can only take the pchas. Amar Rav Papa lo pligi. This is actually not a machlokas. Ha de'avida le'agra. One was where the setup was that the guy was renting the boat, and one was a setup where ha de'lo avida le'agra, and the other setup was where he wasn't renting the boat; he was just a damager. Rav is the first case, and Shmuel is the second. V'i ba'isema, first of the long lines on Tzadi Zayin Amud Aleph. Ha ve'ha de'avida le'agra. Everyone agrees that we're talking about a guy who rented a boat. I'm thinking like Airbnb. We just had this. This is mamish a true story. Okay, this just happened. We were in Florida. We rented an Airbnb. The dryer, the washing machine, wouldn't spin without an error. So we were a family of 8 with a swimming pool. We had like 87 towels. We packed in order to do laundry and it wasn't working. So we registered. We were very polite about it. Just wanted to let you know that the washing machine, you guys caused some damage. He took a picture, I have it, of a pool noodle with a little bit of a divot in the outside of the pool noodle. I'm like,
So now it's worth 98 cents.
right, yeah. And maybe I'm chayiv on the pchas,
Right.
but you owe me a washing machine. That's fine. I'm happy to. You want to go that route? We ended up being a mensch about it. We just whatever. It was fine. It was fine. But I'm just saying that's this case. This is like an Airbnb case. It's I rented. I really did try to rent, and in that case, there's some latitude. I only went in there to steal your stuff. Depends on your mindset. So that's according to this. This is a good Gemara for that in regards to the Airbnb case. If I went in for the rental, so then I can choose how I pay. I can either pay cash, or I can pay the rental cost, or I can pay the pchas. Just a math equation. Gazal matbea v'nistak. We spoke about multiple cases. If you look back in our Mishnah, the Mishnah is on Tzadi Vav Amud Beis. So we had Gazal Matbea v'nistak. We said Mishalem Kshas Hagzela. And then we said that if it was a matbeh that wasn't cracked, but it became irrelevant, it was out of circulation, right? Like the smallest coins in Israel, which were out of circulation. That's a little different. There, the Mishnah says, Harei shel chalafanecha. There, you don't have to pay kshas hagzela. You just return the useless coin. Very different, very different. So the cracked coin has to be paid for. The coin that's no longer in circulation, that's harei shel chalafanecha. Here you go. So we're going to speak about this distinction. 8-9 lines from the bottom. Sadi Zayin Amud Aleph. Amar Rav Huna nistak mamish. When the Mishnah says that it's cracked, it literally means that it cracked. Nifsal. When it says nifsal, when our Mishnah says that a coin became puzzle, that's psalto malchus. That's when the government says this coin no longer has any value, which it hasn't happened in our lifetime here in the United States, but it has happened. What was the smallest text? What was the smallest currency? Is the 5 agurot? No, that's old. But there was a 10 agura piece, and I think there was a 5. The 10s are gone, right?
Yeah, I know, every once in a while they give them to you, every once in a while.
I think there was one below the 10 agurot. Yeah, I remember. I'm remembering. I hated that. There was so much change to carry, and their 10 shekels was significant. The
And
gold thing?
too.
Oh, that's old. That's old. You're old. Yeah.
That's what you like. But if you know.
But I have a brother your age. That's not because of my own experiences.
But that was what you used to do. You used to tie a string on it, you put it in.
You're an Indian giver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's not what I meant. That was the storage. No.
Yes, I was with him. I wasn't with you. That's
Zero people.
yeah. Okay. So now we're going to discuss this distinction. According to Rav Huna, when it says nifsal in our Mishnah, that's a case where the government says that it's out of circulation. Rav Yehuda Amar, psalto malchus nami hainu nistak. No, Rav Yehuda argues that when our Mishnah says psalto malchus, that's the same halachic status as nistak. So then, according to him, to Rav Yehuda, elahechi dami nifsal. Then what did our Mishnah mean by nifsal? It doesn't mean that the government took it out of circulation. What does it mean? Shepsalto Medina Zu, v'yotzev Medina Acheres, that yes, it no longer works in this country, but it does work in another country. I'm making this up. But let's say that the Canadian penny doesn't work in America, but the American penny works in Canada. So like you have like this, some currencies just don't work everywhere. Okay. Amar le Rav Chizda le Rav Huna. Rav Chizda says to Rav Huna, who was our first shita, Rav Chizda says, Lididcha de amris nifsal psalto malchus. According to you, who says that when there's a coin that's nifsal, it means that the government took it out of circulation. Hare, that's very similar to peros v'hir kivu, to fruits that spoiled. Yain v'hichmitz, or wine that's no longer drinkable. It's become vinegar. Psalto malchus dami, they're very similar to the government invalidating those coins. Biktani, nevertheless, our Mishnah says mishalim kshas hagzela, but that's a stira. If you want to say that nifsal means psalto malchus, it should have the same din as the yain shehichmitz, which is mishalim kshas hagzela, as opposed to the other case of harei shel chalafanecha. Which one is it? Amar le hasam. That's not true. It's not correct. By the fruits and vegetables that have spoiled, or the wine that has become vinegar, hasam nishtana ta'am overecho. You can open that bottle of wine from 6 weeks ago in your fridge, and you know when you take the cork out that it smells like vinegar. You can tell. But hacha lo nishtana. Here, by the coins that the government said were no longer valid in circulation, they're the same exact item below shum shinui, harei shel chalafanecha. That's the distinction.
Is that because of the tsura of the coin or the actual?
Nothing changed about the coin.
And how do you know which coin is valid?
The government said that the 5 agura piece is no longer part of society. You can't, it's no longer, tender, whatever. You can't hand it, won't count as dollars. They invalidated the coin. Or that would be a practical today example. So nifsal malchuso means that the coin's the same, but it has no value. They devalued it.
But back then, the coin had value in the weight of it.
Very good. We're gonna be discussing that. That's true. But while it's true that it did have some value, it wasn't allowed to be used as their currency, whatever the parameters were.
Those original old shekels that you can't use now, right?
presumably.
You guys are too young.
No.
Even before, there used to be a different monetary values for shekel chadash.
Correct.
Basically locked off 3 zeros. Right, they
Like she was
reinvented the shekel in 1986, but way before then, there was lira.
Yeah.
There's lira in Israel, way before.
Lira and Bush.
Yeah.
That's when you were 30 years old.
Oh my gosh, this is there's some punches being. The back row is always difficult. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who's sitting there. Beautiful. Omar lay, and this is like one of my favorite things to ever happen in the Gemara. See how it says Rava le Rabbi Yehuda? That is impossible. Take a look at the Mesoras Hashas, Os Katan Zayin. What?
I love this stuff.
It's amazing. I love it.
I feel so bad about myself.
Why?
I should remember something.
Oh,
It can't be that hard to remember.
there's so many names in the Gemara. Says the Gemara, an Os Katan Zayin. Sorry, says the Mesoras Hashas, Os Katan Zayin. Tzarach lomar Rabba. Dahami shemeis Rav Yehuda nolad Rava. Kimevuar Kedushin Ayin Beis. Rav Yehuda was a 2nd century. He was Rav Yehuda, Rav Kahana, Rava. And yes, they're only 2 generations apart. And let's call a generation 40 to 50 years back in the day. People were having children at much younger ages. But Rav Yehuda died before Rava was born. So it's impossible. So this was just a mistake of the typesetter over here. And Amar Le, therefore, Rabba, who was 3rd century instead of 4th, Rabba le Rav Yehuda, Lidi dach, according to you, the Amris Psalto Malchus Nami Hainu Nistak, that when you say that the government's cancellation of a coin is the same as a coin being cracked, Hare Truma v'nitmes, the same thing should be true about Truma that became Tameh. V'chi Psalto Malchus Dami, it's similar to the coins being invalidated by the government. Nevertheless, v'katani omer lo Hare shel chalafanecha. Why by the coin that cracked do we say that you have to pay for it? But over here, we say, Hareshal Chalafanecha, Amar Le, Hasam, in regards to the case of the produce of the Truma, Lo Minkar Hezeka. This came up already. Somebody said this, that was what they were talking about before. It's unrecognizable damage. You're right. You turn the Truma into Tuma. There's nothing that you can actually do about that anymore. It's done, but it's invisible. However, Hacha, here, in regards to the coin, guess what? There's a crack in it, and therefore Minkar Hezeka. So those are the distinctions. Itmar, we have a statement of the Amoraim. Bottom line of Tzadi Zayin Amar Aleph says the Gemara as follows: Hamal ve'es chavero al hamatbeya v'nifsala hamatbeya. I lend you money. I give you a $100 bill, and this didn't happen yet in our culture, they actually removed the old $100 bills from society. You know, sometimes at the bank, they give you like a stack of bills and some of them look like our childhood and some of them don't. The newer ones look different. They have that plastic strip on them, different ballgame. Let's say there's a day where the American government decides we're no longer using the old $100 bills. They're being removed from circulation. But 10 years ago, I made a loan with you with that money. So what happens? Rav Amar, turning to the top of Tzadi Zayin Amid Beis, Mirza Hashem, we're going to get to the top of Tzadi Ches Amid Aleph. No sein lo matbea hayotze be'osasha. You need to swap it out with the equivalent of today's $100 bill. So that means that I'm giving you a different $100 bill. I'm giving you the new one. The Shmuel Amar, Yachalomar lo lechotziu b'mishan. Go spend it in Mishan. What does that mean? That there's another place that will take the old $100 bills. You go over there. Mishan is a place, but it really means that place that's far away, which means get over it. You lost out. Not my problem. Go spend your old $100 bill in another city. It's like the kaspomat, like when you go in Israel to these guys who are the money changers, they'll take your currency. You know, if they have any way of verifying that it's still valid, they'll take your currency. Fine. Amar Rav Nachman, mistabra milse de Shmuel, it's logical what Shmuel is saying, that old $100 bill is still usable, but that's only helpful if he ever has the chance of going to Meshan, right? But if he says, "Oh, this is usable in Antarctica," that's not helpful. I'm not going there. Then even Shmuel seemingly would agree to Rav that you have to switch the bills now. There has to be a practical aspect.
It's like someone loses out on money.
I mean, it's a definite possibility. What the Meshan case? You're saying if I'm Shmuel and I say, well, it's still usable in Israel, but I live in Chicago, most people at some point make it to Israel, so that's okay. But if Shmuel says, well, it's usable in Antarctica, nobody goes to Antarctica. Nobody normal goes to Antarctica. I shouldn't say that. That's rude. But nobody goes to Antarctica. So sorry, I got to start. What is going on tonight? What is going on? But if Shmuel were to say that the Antarctica, so then even Shmuel would agree that that's an unreasonable outlet, and then you would have to swap the bills. That's correct, and then money's lost one way or the other. Yes. Tzadi Zayin Amid Beis, 5 lines down. Esvei Rava le Rav Nachman. Rava says to Rav Nachman, we have a brisa. Ein mechalalin al hamaos she'enam yotzos. You're not allowed to be mechalal, talking about Meiser Sheni. You cannot take the holy Meiser Sheni food and put it onto a coin that isn't in circulation. It's a useless currency. Can't do that. The lira. Yeah, you can't do that. Ketzad. Hayulo maos kozvios Yerushalmios. This was an old type of currency. Shel Malachim Harishonim, or a currency that was used for early kings. Ein mechalalin. That currency is not usable. What's implied from here, says the Gemara, is ha shel achronim dumya derishonim mechalalin. However, there was a later form of money that was used, similar to the Rishonim, and there it is mechalalin, even though it's not really usable in Eretz Yisrael. And if it's not usable in Eretz Yisrael, so that's a big problem, and that also presents a kasha on Shmuel, on Rav Nachman's understanding of Shmuel. What did Shmuel say? Shmuel said that as long as it's usable somewhere, then you're good to go. But then what about here? It's not usable here. Why would you be? This is not usable. We were talking about Meiser Sheni. So it has to be usable in Eretz Yisrael. So it's not. Gemara says, we're talking about when governments don't really care, and we can find a way to swap out the dollars and use them. So then on the achronim, on the newer money, on the newer version of the money, then you're good to go. If that's true, that Shmuel was talking about a case where things were makbid on one another, if Shmuel, if the Arukimta to understand Shmuel in the previous brisa was that governments are not makbid, and that's how we understood that new brisa of Achronim, that means that the case of Meshan at the top of the page was when they were makbid on one another. But if that's true, how are you going to get the money to Meshan? Governments don't allow you to use foreign currencies. Could you imagine, like, we're not used to this. We have credit cards, right? But if let's say there was a rule that you can't take American dollars outside of America and they check you at the border. How are you going to use the money in Meshan, Shmuel? Like, it's not even practical. So the Gemara says, you could do it. You know, like when you fill out those forms, they're like, are you carrying $10,000 in American currency? And if you are, you lie about it and say that you're not. So then the Gemara says, Delo Bakshi, we're talking, what? No. Oh. I already have to burn this whole computer, so it doesn't matter what I say anymore. I know. It's true. I should stop drinking Coke. I just kicked one back before we started. No, it's not happening. So the Gemara says that, don't worry, you can sneak it into Beishan, Delo Bakshi. Bakshi means in Aramaic that they're not checking. Yes, if they catch you, then it's going to be a problem. But they don't really check so much, you know, like when you go through customs and you're carrying something you shouldn't. So then you like kind of keep your eyes down and keep walking. Hopefully, most people don't check. If they check, they'll catch you. Fine. That's what the case of Meshan has to be. Tashma, another brisa, a third of the way down, Tzadi Zayin Amid Beis. Ein mechalalin al ma'os shel kan behein bebavel. Okay, you're not allowed to be mechalel meiser sheni on ma'os of Eretz Yisrael when you are in Bavel. V'shel Bavel behein kan, and the reverse. Shel Bavel behein bebavel mechalalin. However, coinage from Bavel when the meiser sheni is in Bavel, you're good to go. Katani mihas, what did we learn in this brisa? That ein mechalalin al ma'os shel kan behein bebavel. Afal gav disofol mesak lahasab. Even though at the end of the day, you're actually going to bring it to Eretz Yisrael. Why would that not be allowed? It must be that the governments are strict, because this is a great example of where money will be used for sure, unquestionably, because you specifically took the money to bring it to the Beis HaMikdash. Yahachi, says the Gemara, Shel Bavel Behein Bebavel Lamai Chazu. What good does it do for you if you have your Meiser Sheni in Bavel, and you are going to be putting it on Bavel coins. Perhaps the Bavel coins won't work in Eretz Yisrael. Chazu dezavimbu behema masik lushalayim. The Gemara responds, I could buy a behema here in Bavel with my Babylonian monies, whatever their currency was, a zuz, let's say, right? They did that, and then I could just bring my animal, simple, no problem. Walk from Iraq to Jerusalem with a leash on a cow, no problem. It's going to be a walk in the park. Umasik Yerushalayim. Hatanya, why are you limiting the types of currencies in Yerushalayim? The Lishka would take any types of coins. They knew people were coming from all over the place. Everybody knows that every kind of currency was accepted. So what was the Havamine of the question that the Babylonian currency wouldn't have been accepted in Yerushalayim, such that you can, we had to come up with this cockamamie, I got to buy an animal and walk it from Bavel to Yerushalayim, ridiculous. Amar Abzer Lokasha. Kan Bisman Sheyad Yisrael Tkifa Lumos Olam. One case is talking about where the Jews are in charge of things, they kind of have control, and then fine. But kan bisman shiad umos ha'olam tkifa al atzman. The other was the nations of the world are in charge. So when the nations of the world are in charge, they may have instituted a rule that the Babylonian currency cannot be okay. In that case, you have to get an animal and come up with the whole circumvent. Tanu Rabbana, 9 lines or so from the bottom. The Gemara says, Ezu matbea shel Yerushalayim. What is the coin of Jerusalem? This is great. This is like I haven't looked. I wonder if we found coins like this in archaeology. Look at this. David ushlomo mitzad echad, Yerushalayim ir hakodesh mitzad acher. Anybody know archaeology? David and Shlomo on one side. By the way, if it was made during their times, and if we have found it in archaeology, l'chora, it's what they actually looked like.
Yeah.
Because they were. It would be fascinating. I just don't know if it's true. I mean, I'm sure the Gemara is true. I just don't know what currencies have been found. And here's another one. Ve'ezehu matbesh.
Rashi says,
Look at Rashi.
Oh, what did Rashi say? I didn't even look.
it says the word, not their faces.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Oh, the
anyway,
words,
but
because they didn't use faces, it could be like idol worship.
No, it's not. You can use a profile picture as long as it doesn't have 2 eyes. That's fine. Kasuv mitzad echad umitzad sheni kasuv Yerushalayim ir kodesh.
This is, but
It is interesting that Rashi knew that for 1,000 years later. Right? I love that.
Near lo shahaya botsura. The Tosfos actually deals with this on the next Nakuda.
Much.
What?
Rashi was 100 years later. Much later. Much later.
Tosfos says this on the bottom. I'm just seeing this now for the first time, but if you look in the middle line of the last Tosfos, Venira, lo shahaya botsuras zaken uzakena. He's talking about Abraham, which we'll get to in a minute. Mikan, Bachor Ubechura, Mikan, Bachor Bechur Mikan de Aser La'asos Tzuras Adam, like Michael was saying. Elakachaya Kosuv Mitzad Echad. You're right, Michael. That's what the Gemara says, that it's Aser, but I thought it was mutter to say.
I thought I learned that somewhere. That
No,
you couldn't have
it's
faces
not.
on coins
You're-
in Eretz
you're
Yisrael.
this is what I was thinking of doing. It's my topic on-
This is good.
What?
What? Yeah, embossing, right?
Yeah.
But it shouldn't matter because as long as when I was in Poland, we see this all the time. Like when they have like the lions that are kind of built into things that we only see like a profile view. Yeah, I don't understand this. Yeah, I'm in my head. I thought it was profile. I mean, I obviously they're talking about it. What Michael's saying, it's a full front of the face picture. It must be. But why not do a profile picture of them? That should be mutter. I thought we paskin that way. Maybe this is a shita, not that way. All right. I totally misunderstood this. Thanks for all the commentaries. The Ezehu Madbeah Shel Avram. What does the coin of Abraham look like? Avram Avinu, excuse me. Put my question mark in the wrong place. Zaken uzakena mitzad echad. Abraham and Sarah on one side. Ubachar ubesula mitzad acher. And a boy and a girl on the other side, Yitzchak and Rivka.
It seems more of a problem.
What does that mean? Why is it more of a problem?
Well, if you have a face of David and Shlomo,
No.
an actual person, wouldn't that be more of a problem?
Should be the same problem if you're putting if it's Esther to put a person's face.
The issue. Not Rashi. Meaning what Rashi said about David Shlomo Kasu sounds good. You're just gonna write the words Zaken and Zakena, and then
Yep.
write the words Bacher and Mesula. It's
Zaken
not so
and
much.
Zakena. Correct. That's why my brain didn't even do that. That Tosfos is bothered by Mikan, Bachor, Bechur, Mikan. It says, Zaken uzakena Mikan, Bachor ubechura Mikan. So according to the Balei Tosfos, in the first blush of Tosfos, it seems that the older people, Avram and Sarah, were on one side. Zaken, at the end of the first line, Zaken uzakena Mikan, Bachor ubechura Mikan. Venire, lo shahaya bo tzuras, Zaken uzakena Mikan, Bachor ubechura Mikan. The aser lasos tzuras Adam. Elakacha kasuv mitzad echad zaken uzakena, mitzad acher bachor ubesula. The kach piresh bekuntras gabe David u'Shlomo v'Yerushalayim yakodesh akacha kasuv b'matbe. What? Yeah. But it doesn't seem that that's what was happening in Breshis Rabbah. Meaning the base reading of Breshis Rabbah in Tosfos, he had to teach and say veneer that lo shaya. Fascinating. Okay. What time is it? Oh my gosh. All right, let's stop right here at Ba'amine, and we'll pick up Emir Hashem right here tomorrow night. I would imagine tomorrow night we're only going to learn Sadi Ches because it's huge. No, I highly doubt it.
No, because you mentioned Friday is this amount of.
No, I was just going through the pages, but we'll even out by the end of Shabbos. We'll stop right here. Wishing you all a beautiful night.